Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Meredith Hatfield from NECPUC, and I just wanted to briefly welcome you and give a big thank you. This is our last of 6 sessions in our electric system planning training series, and I want to give a big thank you to the NARUC CPI team for helping develop the sessions and doing all of the logistics behind the scenes. So thank you to Jessica and the team at CPI, and also thank you so much to Lisa Schwartz and all of her colleagues at the labs. Lisa, this was your idea, and you knew it was time to circle back to New England, and we really appreciate all of your efforts in putting this together. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Meredith. I'm Lisa Schwartz with Berkeley Lab. Thanks for joining us. I want to thank the U.S. Department of Energy, who is supporting this training for the New England Public Utility Commissions. And the training is also open to commissions throughout the country as well as the public. So thanks to Meredith's organization, the New England Conference of Public Utility Commissioners, our friends at the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. They're providing today's training on incorporating beneficial electrification in distribution planning. And our presenter today is Xiangqi Zhu. She is an electrical engineer at NREL. Among her areas of research are distribution system, load modeling and analysis, improving control of aggregated distributed resources, grid impact analysis for electric vehicles, and also grid value analysis of advanced grid devices. She earned her bachelor's and PhD in electrical engineering. I'll be moderating Q&A following her presentation, so please enter your questions at any time in the Q&A box, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the presentation. We also have a really short evaluation survey that we ask you to complete towards the end of the presentation. We'll put the link in the chat box. Ignore the date on the survey. We rescheduled this webinar. It is today, July 25th, but we didn't change that date on the survey. So let's get started with our training on beneficial electrification. Xiangqi?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa, for the introduction. A quick recap of myself. I'm Xiangqi Zhu. I joined NREL in 2017 after got my PhD in State University and have been working here as a researcher for almost like 5 years. So in this talk, we are gonna focus on beneficial electrification, mainly on 2 subjects: transportation electrification and building electrification. We are going to talk about the challenges grids are facing and what solutions we can develop to mitigate those challenges.
So Xiangqi, let me interrupt you just for a moment. Danielle Burnett has joined us from NARUC, and I'd like her to give a couple opening remarks. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, well, so sorry for the interruption. Just many thanks to Lisa Schwartz and Meredith Hatfield, and as noted, to Jessica Diaz on the NARUC staff for ensuring that we could have all of these sessions well organized and all of the recordings and slides and whatnot posted on the NARUC website. We'll be sure to provide the links again for that so that you can find them afterwards. And with great appreciation for all of our organizers and our speakers. Xiangqi, please go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Daniel. First, let's talk about what is beneficial electrification. If we power devices using electricity, we can at least satisfy one of the following conditions without largely affecting any of the others. We call this electrification beneficial. As we listed here, the 4 conditions include safe consumer money, benefits environment, improve consumer quality of life or product quality, or facilitate a more resilient grid. As an important electrification sector, transportation electrification has brought in evolving charging loads, which pose challenges on our grid operating and planning. Our first topic today is about the challenges the electrical grid is facing and the potential solutions we can have to address those challenges arising from transportation electrification. In the future, 30 years, we will have almost like over 30% of the light duty vehicles on the road becoming electric vehicles. Here, the LDV means light duty vehicle. This brings in the needs of wide access to charging facilities. To meet the charging needs, the Biden administration has established a goal of building a national public charging network of over like 500,000 electric vehicle supply equipment parts by 2030. From one of our Unreal study on electric vehicle charging infrastructure trends, we can also see that the number of charging infrastructure has been growing steadily in the past couple of years, especially the charging infrastructure with a larger charging power rate, say larger than 50 kilowatts. With the increasing charging loads put challenges on the grid, so how we can evaluate the grid impact and what grid impact to expect, how we can plan the charging stations in a way which can minimize the impact and maintaining the resilience and the reliability of the grid, and what solutions we can deploy to mitigate the adverse impact. So those are all the challenges we are facing, and we need solutions to address those challenges. So to address the rising challenges, we have developed corresponding solutions like voltage impact matrix-based grid impact evaluation, Monte-Carlo-based charging node modeling, charging station planning, considering transportation factors and also the grid factors, and also the on-site renewable energy generation, like solar and energy storage, put on the charging station site, and maybe also wind, to help mitigate the grid impact. Those solutions are developed for medium heavy duty electric vehicle, but also can be used for both light duty and medium heavy duty EVs. To evaluate the grid impact which caused by the charging loads, we developed a voltage impact matrix, we call it VIM, that can represent the voltage impact of a node on the system. If a node has a larger VIM value, it means connecting a charging station to this node will cause more voltage fluctuation in the system. Therefore, this node with a larger voltage impact value will not be a good location to put charging stations. Vice versa, if a node has a smaller voltage impact matrix value, like voltage impact value, it can cause less voltage fluctuations in the system, which makes it a better location to connect charging stations. The VIM is developed based on the voltage load sensitivity matrix. We call it VLSM for short. So VLSM is used to evaluate and quantify the voltage impact of each connection point in the system. You can find the details of the matrix and the matrix calculation in the paper listed here. With the voltage impact matrix, we can evaluate charging station location based on the criteria of grid voltage impact. Here's the example of the charging station location evaluation. We calculated the voltage impact factor of each node and clustered the nodes into 3 groups. The blue marks are the best locations with a minimum voltage impact to the grid. The diamond-shaped dots represent the good or moderate locations, which can host some high-capacity charging stations fine, but cannot host a lot of high-capacity charging stations. The remaining uncircled red ones are the worst locations. So some of them can host maybe lower charging rate charging stations, and some of them would cause voltage violations if hosting charging station loads, which means if we don't have any mitigation solutions, that nodes cannot host charging stations. To model the charging station loads, we have developed a fast charging station model to use Monte-Carlo based modeling method. A flowchart of this method is shown in the left figure. This figure here shows some important inputs to the model, the station operation steps, and some notable outputs of the model. This model uses a agent-based modeling approach where the vehicles and the station are defined by a set of respective properties. For a vehicle, these defining properties are its battery capacity, arrival time, initial state of charge, final desired state of charge or energy demand. Arrival time and initial state of charge are some stochastic parameters whose distributions are obtained through a combination of real-world vehicle telemetry data, analytics, and EV system modeling. So after we got the station defined and the vehicle defined, we run Monte-Carlo simulations of the station operation to obtain the average performance metrics. And we obtain the load profiles. Example charging load profiles for the stations with 1, 5, and 10 ports, and a traffic of 30 vehicles per day are shown in the right figure here. Each port has a capacity of 1.2 megawatt, and the station capacity is assumed to be like 1 megawatt times the number of ports at the station. So if it's like 5 ports, it is about like 6 megawatt. The similarity between the station loads for the 5 and 10 ports in this figure here, in terms of the magnitude of their peak, and indicate that can indicate for 30 vehicles per day, the charging demand can be met by like 5 installed ports or fewer. So if you only have 30 vehicles a day in this on-road charging station, you can have maybe 3 ports, 2 ports would be good enough. But you have more vehicles, like the study we did, we have 72 vehicles per day, we need like 4 ports. As shown here, after we get the charging station load model, and also we get the grid evaluation done, we selected locations, we prepared an IEEE standardized test system, which is a 34-bus test system to test our evaluation method and also the charging station load modeling. And also we prepared a realistic distribution system model for our case study. So we have 2 systems, one from IEEE standardized system, one from realistic failure. Here shows some representative time series voltage results from the simulation we have performed on the best, good, and worst locations in the IEEE 34-bus system. Here we connect the 3-port charging stations to the 3 locations respectively. The 3-port charging station has a charging capacity of 3.6 megawatts, which is pretty high. So after comparing the 3 figures here, show that the voltage profile is not greatly affected when the charging stations are placed at the best location. However, connecting charging stations to other locations, especially the worst locations, will cause very large voltage sags and induces a lot of voltage violations. Those 4 figures show the statistical analysis of the 1-day time series voltage results on the IEEE 34-bus system. So figure A here, A to C, shows the distributions of the minimum and the maximum daily voltage of all the nodes in the system. For all the cases, including the base case, which don't have charging stations connected, and the cases of connecting charging stations to the 3 locations. So here we include 4 cases, the base case, and the cases connecting to the best, good, and the worst locations. And we call it case 1 to case 3. So case 1 is the best location, case 3 is the worst location. So from the best location to the worst location, the number of voltage violations increases, which shows that the case 1, which is the best location, have the best capability to accommodate heavy-duty charging stations. The voltage ramp distribution here shown in figure D shows that the best location has smaller voltage ramps, while the good and worst locations have larger voltage ramps. So that means the grid voltage impact evaluation method we developed is working well, and it can identify the locations with best capability to accommodate charging stations without affecting the system voltage in a large extent. and also can identify the good and the worst locations. Those three figures show 1 day, still 1 day time series voltage profiles for phase A of the grid connection points after placing a 3-pole charging station on the different selected locations on the realistic feeder model. So this results out from the realistic utility feeder model. We can see that the voltages are good and not heavily impacted by the charging station loads at the best location, similar to the HVE feeder. The good locations have some voltage violations when heavy charging load occurs in the system, but this one is working better than HVE test system. For the worst location, the voltages are significantly less than the lower limit. So that means the worst location cannot host this charging station because this load is pretty high if we don't have any mitigation. And from our following study, actually for the worst locations, even you have some mitigation, maybe it can also barely host the charging station. So the location of on the grid is very critical for hosting charging station loads. To select a charging station location, grid impact is one factor. The other important factor is transportation considerations. Here we also did a proof of concept study on how to combine both the grid impact and transportation factors in charging station location selection. We used the real-world GIS data to perform a geospatial-based analysis, which are extracted from OpenStreetMap. So OpenStreetMap is a global collaborative data that aims to create a free editable map of the world. So using the OpenStreetMap, we can retrieve data from existing infrastructure such as restaurants, gas stations, and different kinds of buildings. The extracted road network and infrastructure data can be used in our study of charging station location selection, considering the transportation factors. So to define the fast charging stations for heavy-duty EVs, in this work, we assume that the charging station should be located in the areas near highway corridors. So existing infrastructure that have supportive functions for the drivers, such as food services, are considered to be more feasible and desirable locations. We designed a heuristic-based score system to quantitatively compare the feasibility of different highway exits for charging station placement. So based on the number of supportive infrastructure in the adjacent areas. So supportive infrastructure list can be adjusted if a real survey data from heavy-duty EV trucks drivers can be obtained. So using the presented GIS data injection method, so other factors associated with existing transportation infrastructure and facilities can also be added. If we need, we can add more supporting infrastructure types and adjust the score system we have developed. So this figure here shows one example. The big figure on the top, like here, shows an area we extracted from OpenStreetMap, and the 4 small figures shows 4 highway exits, which can be potential charging station locations. So in the case of real-world charging station location selection, we'll have a grid impact score comes from the voltage impact matrix, and also have a transportation score comes from this GIS geospatial analysis, and we can find optimal location by balancing our need between those 2 scores. So we'll have a weighted score, final score, to help the charging station planner to find the optimal location, considering both grid impact factor and the transportation factor. The following 2 slides are examples of potential grid impact brought by light-duty EV. So this one is for the city of Minneapolis. And the next one here is for the city of Atlanta. So those are from another study Ariel has did called Recharge. You can find the detail of the study from the reference we listed here. So each study, there are 2 scenarios modeled. One is normal scenario, where is a reasonable amount of personal vehicles are EVs, while the other is an extreme scenario where 100% of personal vehicles are EVs. The total peak load and the line loading conditions are very different between the two scenarios. I think this would be helpful for other cities and utilities to develop multiple load modeling scenarios where EV penetration rates are different and review the loading and the system conditions in their systems. We have developed some mitigation strategies which can potentially benefit the feeder for charging station hosting. The reactive power support is assumed to be a function of the charger to effectively boost the voltage when the charging load is lowering the system voltage. However, when the charging load is significantly high, reactive power can no longer effectively raise the voltage, and some on-site real power generation is needed to offset part of the charging load. Therefore, an on-site PV system becomes a promising option. However, there are some potential problems with PV providing on-site generations. Like the figure here which shows, when it's a sunny day, we can effectively use the PV power to offset some demand from charging station. However, there can also be an excess of PV power, like more PV power, like a redundant PV power, increasing the voltage during periods when the charging load is not very high, resulting in voltage above the upper limit, some voltage violations. As shown here by the blue dashed line here in the left figure, the voltage, the VIM-Base represents the voltage profile of the connection point of a 3-port charging station on a good location in the realistic utilities feeder model we just showed. So the voltage, this is the voltage base, and the blue line is the voltage with PV. We can see in this period there's some voltage violations, and even though there are no violations in other period here, it can also boost the voltage to a very large extent, which is not desired. As shown here, when it's cloudy day, we barely use the PV power in an effective manner because the PV power generation and the peak charging load is not temporally aligned together. So when we need a large amount of PV power to support the heavy charging load, the PV panel does not generate enough power. But when we don't need it, it has a lot of power generation. Therefore, it is important to design appropriate sizes for the 3 critical parts in the PV and the storage and the charging and the smart charger solution. So it can balance the reactive power and also the real power and to balance out the fluctuation of the PV generation. In this way, the energy storage can effectively store the excess PV power and power the charging load when PV is not generating, and the inverter can provide enough reactive power support when there is not enough on-site real power generation. So here is a case study. We developed a sizing method to find the optimal size of charger, PV, and energy storage. I'll briefly introduce this sizing method later. After we place the energy storage here in the system, the total effective PV portion of the 7 days improved from like 25% to like 99%, as showing the chart here. The energy storages have saved almost 100% of the actual PV energy and enabled the on-site PV generation to effectively help mitigate the voltage impact. Those two figures show the histogram of the voltages on all the nodes in the system in a 1-day simulation. I think it's 1 minute resolution. The left is under the no mitigation scenario, while right is with PV energy storage and also smart charger mitigation resolution implemented. As shown, we can see the mitigation solution successfully resolves the voltage impact brought by the heavy-duty charging load and maintains the voltages within a reasonable range for all the nodes in the system. Those two figures shows the voltage profile of the charging station connection point. So this is a selected node, which is the charging station connected node for one day. So similarly, left one without the mitigation. So right with mitigation, we can see the voltage saves during the day have been effectively saved by the on-site generation plus the smart chargers solutions. To balance the size of each part of the PV energy storage charger on-site solution, we propose a methodology to achieve the optimal size combinations of the three-part on-site solution, which includes the PV energy storage and smart charger, with objectives of maintaining the system voltage within limits and minimizing the total capital cost of the on-site PV energy storage charger solution. So if you want the detail of the method, you can find in our paper here listed here. So basically, if you have the price of the charger and also have the price of the PV and energy storage system, you can find the optimal size using our method. That's all about the transportation electrification and how it can be used for the distribution system planning. If you would like to know more details, you can either contact me or refer to the list of papers we have in the slides. Next, I'll talk about the building electrification and discuss the challenges and the solutions for the distribution system. So we have identified two major challenges here. So first is how to understand and host the increasing building loads, how we can model the load for better system analysis and planning. The next challenge is how we can manage the load and take advantage of the loads. After we can model the loads, we want to think about how we can manage and take advantage and let the load contribute value to the grid, and how we can understand and estimate load flexibility and take advantage of the flexibility. So first, let's discuss how we can model the load and address the modeling challenges. A number of load modeling functions are being used now, which could be divided into two groups. One group is advanced distribution management system, we call it ADMS, and the other is distribution system simulators like OpenDSS, Energy, Science. Load modeling right now is a basic module in those software packages, often serving as a function called load allocation. So when we perform time series analysis, each node in the system is populated with a load sheet, which is the same as that of the system substation. The only difference between the load profiles of the nodes is the magnitude, which is decided by the customer transformer capacity on each node. However, the grid integration of the DRs is growing. To better analyze the interaction between DR and the load and analyze how the system can better host the DRs, it is becoming more and more important to simulate the system load in a more realistic manner, which can capture the diversities of the system loads. Also, DRs participating in grid services through aggregation will come true in the very near future. The FERC has issued the Order 2022 to enable DRs to participate in grid services, allowing these small capacity DRs to aggregate together to satisfy the minimum size requirement. As we show in this figure, the loads in distribution systems are very diversified. Buildings, houses have different DR combinations, and the load DR interactions are very different among various load patterns. So different load DR combinations may find their best fit in different grid service programs. Therefore, it is very critical to analyze the load DR interactions and select the best candidates to aggregate for a specific grid service program. Also, utilities can issue correct service signals to the aggregators, and aggregators can deliver accurate commands to the loads suitable for these grid services. So those are very important factors to guarantee the success of the grid service program. So after we discussed with several utilities about the distribution system load modeling needs, we have developed this ALSAT tool for advanced load scenario and analysis. It's under development now. Actually, the development is kind of done under the technology upgrade now and will be public available soon. The figure here shows the overall scheme or strategy of the modeling methodology of the ALSAT. And showing the middle, the core of this modeling methodology is the Diversity Library and the Variability Library. Those two libraries are established from measured high-resolution load data. The Diversity Library contains various load patterns, while the Variability Library includes the high-resolution load variabilities extracted from the measured data. We have two ways of distribution load modeling here. In one approach, we model this, we get a substation load profile and the distribution factors of the feeder nodes as input. And we use the base template. We use that as the base template for each generated load profile. Then the diversity and the variability models will be applied. After that, the load profiles will be adjusted to ensure that the summation of all the load profiles is equivalent to the substation load profiles. In another approach, the peak load at each node is used as input to the model. So in this approach, we don't have a substation load profile. In this case, we will have a load aggregation method, deploy the variability and the diversity model to create load profiles according to the peak loads information. Here shows how we can build the diversity library. So if a utility has their measurements, high resolution measurements from a part of the territory, that can be used as input to build the diversity library and the variability library. And then for the other areas without the enough load measurements, this ALSAT tool can be used to populate the load profiles with diversity and variabilities on this territory without enough measurements. So first, the elbow method is used to decide the number of clusters we have in this group, in this large group, and then we will use the k-means clustering method to cluster load profiles into a number of clusters. So we divided this large group into n clusters, a number of small clusters. The center profile of each cluster is identified as used as the template load pattern for that cluster, and we will derive the load pattern from this center profile and store that in the diversity library. The left two figures here are two sample clusters. We can see the upper five profiles have very similar shapes, where we have a morning peak and a consistent high load consumption during the day. The lower three profiles all have a very low consumption in the afternoon. The right three figures here shows the three sample center profiles, which we extracted from three clusters, and they will be used as load patterns in the diversity library. We use a discrete wavelet transform, like PWT, to build the variability library. So basically, the detail of the construction of the variability library can be found in our previous paper, like this here. Showing in this figure, the high resolution hourly variations extracted from the realistic measure of transformer level data. Since the extracted hourly variations will constitute the variability library, will be stored there and be used to create new synthetic load profiles. As shown in the figure on the upper left, plane loads all have a simple shape. The plane loads is just derived from the substation load profile with different magnitude according to the customer transformer rating. And after, so we can see they have very similar load shapes. So after we have applied the diversity model, we can see it like those loads have different load patterns, but with relatively few variations. Load resulting from the application of just the variability model have a lot of variations, but they have similar underlying load patterns, like we show here. The figure on the lower right here shows the sample load profiles with both diversity and variability models applied. The load profile in this category have diversified load profiles with various patterns, and also have high resolution hourly variations. The two table here shows the comparison of voltage regulator operations between the loads with both diversity and variability and the plain loads. As time resolution goes from like 1 second to 30 minutes, we can see the variability modeling should be effectively like kind of eliminated due to heavily averaging, and the impact of the diversity model will be like isolated and remain. In the case with both diversity and variability, if you improve the time resolution from 30 minutes to 1 second, it can increase the number of regulator operations captured. But in the case with plain loads, the regulator operation don't change much as the temporal resolution increases, which means that load profiles don't capture a lot of diversity and variabilities, which is very important for the DER load interactions. Those here show second to second the voltage ramp distribution of simulations with different load sets. Voltage ramps are particularly important for DER studies. Therefore, the ability to accurately model the load profiles, which can generate realistic levels of voltage ramps, is very important. So if we compare these three figures, we can see the voltage ramps are more diversified for the simulation with diversity built-in loads. Also, if we add variabilities onto the nodes, that can help capture a wider range of voltage ramps. So after we can simulate the system with more realistic load profiles and analyze more realistic load in DER interactions, the next thing we want to think about is how to manage the loads and take advantage of the loads. So how we can understand and estimate the load flexibility and make the best use of the flexibilities. So residential and commercial buildings, both of them have great potential to provide demand response and contribute the value to the grid. So how we can reveal the value of those building loads to provide demand response and incorporate this value into the planning process. So we need to first estimate the demand side management potential of the different buildings. And then we need to integrate them into the distribution system planning process and get to understand their capability from different building groups. To address those questions or challenges, we have developed one solution to take advantage of both grid data and the behavior-based load models and census data to understand and estimate the flexibility of the buildings. To model the load which are controllable, we have divided the building load into three groups. One is activity-based, other temperature-based, and last one is lighting loads. And for different groups, we have leveraged the models in the literature and find the best one to model the building loads. And in the future, we are right now working on adding the EV charging load using the model we developed before. And after we develop models, we use the peak and street data to validate. So we extract the temperature and irradiance data from Austin, Texas, and also use the peak and street data from the city, and to aggregate 100 houses together, and we validate them. We validate our model against the beacon data. We can see our model and capture the general pattern and some variabilities and diversities in the real load from Texas. So by leveraging the census data, we can analyze the load consumption among different socioeconomic groups. So here shows one example. So those groups are divided by income level. If we assume average load profile represents the base load, which we cannot have any flexibility, and potentially we can have more flexibility from groups with higher consumption than average. So from this figure, we can identify like people with which income group maybe have more flexibility during which time. So in that case, we can inform the utility or the load aggregator like what load types they want to recruit during different times of grid service. And if we combine this with other load analysis among more socioeconomic groups, we can have more information and a more thorough analysis combining different dimensions. So after we get the effective estimation of flexibility, it can be effectively used for the distribution system planning. It can help effectively plan and design demand response programs and help aggregators recruit the appropriate buildings or houses for different demand response programs, or even for the grid or the utility level to recruit appropriate larger groups of buildings or houses to participate in ISO market, and also help utilities effectively plan the infrastructure upgrades to avoid unnecessary costs on adding new infrastructure if we can use the management to solve that. Here are some questions. Maybe you can go and ask the utilities to make the grid more resilient and more reliability, and also make the electrification more beneficial to the grid. Examples: how do you enable wide access to charging facilities while maintaining high resilience and reliability of power distribution system? And how to combine the on-site generation solution with manage the charging solution to achieve a cost-effective EV grid impact mitigation, and how we can design the incentive programs with changing prices that can enable manage the EV charging without or manage the building consumptions without invasive control of behavior, and what potential demand response probability can be provided from different groups of customers, maybe different groups of commercial building, different groups of residential building. So here are some resources. For more information, you can click on the link, and they can direct you to the website, which can provide more information for the presentation we have today. I guess that's the end of my presentation, and thanks for your attention. This noon, for me it's noon, for some it's east, maybe it's afternoon. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I have my phone number and the email here. I'm also happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Xiangqi. That was great. We do have a couple questions in the Q&A box that I'll ask you. First one is about the voltage impact matrix that you talked about near the beginning of your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is there a standard way of accounting for the need for a charger? In other words, the distance from other chargers, and weighing it against the voltage impact on the local grid.
Could you say it again? I kind of didn't get the point of the first half. Yeah.
Sure. So the question is if there's a standard way to account for whether you need a charger, with respect to, how close is the next one, right? The distance from other chargers.
Okay.
So the need for a charger, and you're weighing that against the voltage impact on the electrical grid at those locations, at the location you're looking at.
Got it. Okay, I got it. That's a very good question. And actually, that's a question I think maybe need more source to put in. So if we already have a charging station on node 1, and maybe because of the population of this area and the EV penetration rate, we might need another one on node 2, but maybe from the grid perspective, from the voltage impact aspects, the node 2 might not be appropriate for a second charging station because it will cause voltage violation or something else, maybe high line loading. I think when so from my perspective, there should be a standardized approach to resolve, to address or develop a solution to satisfy these needs. So we can use the voltage impact matrix as one criterion, and add another, like I mentioned in the charging station location planning, add another criterion of the charging station needs, and we add different weight there to have a final score. So in that way, we can balance those two and to see if the needs of adding a second charging station is large enough. If it's large enough, actually we can apply the mitigation solution, on-site generations and PV and storage and wind to put a second charging station there. But if the needs is not that high, the grid infrastructure upgrade cost or the cost of the other like on-site generation or the grid impact cost is very high and higher than the need of adding charging station. Actually, we just maybe find another place to add charging station, which can balance better the charging needs and the grid impact.
That's helpful. Is that the publication here at the bottom of the slide 7, is that a useful resource for folks to address this question, or is there another one that you've mentioned in your list of resources?
I think the publication here, yeah, this publication, the 6th one should be working for that.
Okay, great, on slide 17, thanks. And sort of related to that, I had a question about, you're talking about mitigation. So, you have things like, distributed resource solutions that you could put in. Are there other, can you talk at a high level about other grid modernization investments that utilities and public utility commissions might be considering to enable beneficial electrification for transportation, say explicitly? What kinds of other, on the utility side, like what kinds of grid modernization investments are utilities and commissions considering for mitigation?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So from higher level, I think there are a couple of ways utilities can invest to modernize the grid to accommodate the charging loads. The first, they can manage the other loads. So for the other loads in the system, you can manage them to a way which can provide more capacity to power the charging loads. That's one way. So like ADMS, like DERMS, they can be used for managing the DRs and the loads in the system and to better accommodate the future charging loads.
So you're talking about DERMS, did you say DERMS, the distributed energy resource management systems?
Yeah.
Is that what you mentioned? Okay.
And the second is to manage the charging. So if a charger developer or a EV developer want to add a charger in the utility system, So utility might be able to request a charging management. So instead of adding new infrastructure into the grid or upgrade the existing infrastructure, it can ask the charging station to manage the charging demand. Like that's one thing. The second is similar to the second one. So instead of asking the charging station to manage, utility can kind of manage all the charging loads from a higher level, maybe using the changing charging price.
I was also thinking about hardware. So, DERMS, obviously, Distributed Energy Resource Management System is a system. Are there other pieces of large hardware, that they're installing to sort of address these voltage ramps, for example?
Speaking of the hardware, from my mind, I see like distributed wind as a great solution because it has a smaller footprint than the PV system. If you have a one maybe like 0.5 megawatt PV system, it occupies a large land. But for the wind, as the technology moves forward, it can have a smaller footprint, especially for the rural area. The charging stations near the highway, maybe the area is not that populated. It can have a distributed wind. That's one promising solution. I think is the hardware. The second one, the second one.
So you're talking about like distributed energy resources, so that you have the powering, the generators powering the charging closer. I'm thinking about distribution system hardware.
Okay, so in that case, I think so if sooner or later the transformers need to be upgraded and maybe some lines. So I guess it will be helpful for utilities to project the charging loads in their territory, maybe in the future 10, 20, 40, 50 years, and to see if they already incorporated all the management solutions of the charging load of the DR and system, but they still need some upgrade. So I think maybe the better solutions to upgrade sooner to accommodate more charging loads and maybe avoid some cost of adding management hardware or software, so we can have more benefits, more profits from maybe an earlier stage.
Great, now that's super helpful. Can you say more about maintaining grid resilience while enabling wide access to charging facilities? And from two perspectives. First, some of the grid technical issues with that. And second, to ensure sufficient charging stations for large population centers and disadvantaged communities. So that equity concern that we all have.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So first one, from the technical point of view, I think enabling the charging stations to participate in grid services to providing demand response is a great option to maintaining the grid resilience. If we have a number of gas stations now retired and becoming charging stations, so if we drive from our home to office and all the gas stations right now, we passed becoming the charging stations. Actually, if all the charging stations can provide demand response to an extent, that will be very helpful for maintaining the grid resilience. And for the second one, from the geospatial point of view, I think it's very important to do the vulnerability study of the communities, so we can leverage the census data and also do the survey to engage the stakeholders, community stakeholders, and to identify what's their needs and what's their kind of energy needs and also their resilience needs. For some communities, maybe they are not capable of power outage for a long time. Or for some communities, maybe they have some at home business. So actually they need a more resilient power, so something like that. And for especially for the underserved communities, we might want to have some solutions to enable them to have access to charging facilities so they can have more EVs in their life, and so they can take advantage of the government tax credit or other things to make their life better and save their energy bills. Because if they have EVs, actually they can maybe someday sell power to the grid.
I want to try to answer one question really quickly. If you go to slide 7, there's a question on that slide. It's the one about quarterly growth of public DC fast EVSE ports. The question is, you see the segment in the purple, at least on my screen is purple. Why are the 51 to 299 kW ports increasing the greatest amount each quarter?
Could you say again the purple one? So
yeah.
So from which quarter to which quarter?
Just over time, they seem to be, increasing. The share of that size between 51 and 299 kW is increasing over time.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think that's reasonable because the EV battery is advancing towards a larger capacity, and people want a higher power, like charging power rate to reduce the charging time. So that's why the public charging infrastructure are having more and like I guess so more and more public charging infrastructure will have a higher rate, so reduce the charging time. So I think that's why this higher charging rate infrastructure is having more and more share in the total charging infrastructure.
That makes sense. All right, thank you so much for your presentation and answering questions. Jessica, I'll turn it back over to you and Niruk.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hi all, thank you so much for taking the time to join us for our electricity system planning training today. Nothing from me. I've dropped some links into the chat for resources on our past trainings, as well as the link for the survey for today. All of those will also be sent out in an email to you later today or this week as well. But thank you all for joining us.